Can you hear me now?
Now I can hear you.
Oh, good. That means everybody else can hear me.
That's the theory.
Okay. All right, guys. Well, it's been a very busy week. We've had war in Iran. We've had all sorts of sneaky British stuff going on. We've had all sorts of bank and financial things that have been moving in the background. Just, a wild assortment of different things that are of interest, but not any real red hot headlines that demand our specific attention. Maybe what we should do is make up for some of the time that has been lost for questions the last couple of weeks and just start out with questions.
Works by me. All right, let's start with the first one. All right, when we wired FRNs to our global accounts initially, the balance was displayed correctly in our accounts. This balance was later set to zero once the FRNs were converted to AFD. Where are those FRNs deposited now, in what bank and country? Who has access to those FRNs and for what purpose? Thank you.
Well, once you've converted to another currency, it doesn't matter. You know, um, for example, if you were to convert FRNs to Swiss francs, then all that matters is the Swiss francs because that's all you're holding. So, I really don't understand why you would be interested in where the FRNs went once they were converted to AFD. You exchanged paper for gold assets.
Okie dokie. Next question. What documentation or article or 928 doc would an ASN need to provide in order to be excluded from any mandate or law taking a vaccine or wearing a mask? They are currently trying to drum up measles outbreak or some type of created COVID strain or flu strain ordered by our job or local store or whatever entity. Two, you mentioned a few weeks ago, retail or retail banks is the name associated with GFG. Can you comment on the meaning? When I looked it up, it mentioned something about private banks.
No, all I was saying is that originally Global was set up to be a bank among banks. It wasn't meant to serve the public. It was meant to be a bank that transferred money among the banks. And suddenly it got the added extra responsibility of providing you with service, which is a whole different business and a whole different level of caring and support and variety of different transactions that have to be handled. So that's what I was talking about, retail services to individual customers versus wholesale customer transactions where you're transferring money between banks. That's what I'm talking about. What was the first part there?
What documentation or article or 928 DOC would an ASN need to provide in order to be excluded from any mandate or law from taking a vaccine and wearing a mask?
We've already covered that during the COVID-19 business. It was always illegal for them to demand anything like that from anyone but one of their own citizens. So our right to privacy and the sanctity and security of our persons is guaranteed. And we developed a little card about the size of a credit card that had all the appropriate laws and codes and whatnot that they were forced to accept and respect during COVID. So it would be the same laws and the same codes that still apply because your health is your private business. And there isn't a word in any of their contracts giving them any authority to say one word about it. I'm sure it's still on the TASA website. You can probably go to documents on the TASA website and see the basically the get out of jail free card that you can download and carry around in your wallet.
Okay, next question. HOA question tonight. I placed my condo in my trust and I also filed a UCC1 lien on it. Today I received a letter from HOA saying they have filed a lien on my place and I have 30 days to pay the balance before they proceed to taking more action. What can I do? Can they lien my property if I already have a lien on it?
Well, sure, anybody can lien anything. That's not the important part. The important part is that they're going to have to get through your trust before they can get to you. The other part of it is that the HOAs in general are on the ropes and probably on their way out, because what they're trying to say is that you signed a private contract with all the other homeowners in the HOA, and therefore you are obliged to fulfill all the details that the other HOA members voted on. And that can be anything. They could, in theory, have an HOA rule that said you couldn't fly a flag, or you couldn't have window boxes, or you could only walk your dog between 6 a.m. and 7 a.m. every day, and 6 p.m. and 7 p.m. every night. They could make up all sorts of crazy statutory type laws that are applied and applicable within an HOA group, which is why you never want to join an HOA. One of the things about HOAs that can be beneficial is that they can form their own kind of community regulations with regard to utilities. But I never thought that there was any big advantage to them, really. They can be used in various tactical ways when it comes to legal issues, but then they can be used against you too. So I think if you really want a better solid answer, then we need more information. Did you sign the HOA agreement voluntarily, or was it something that was coercive? There are so many different kind of variations on that theme that we'd have to have a lot more information to give you real good advice. The HOA as a concept, however, has been challenged successfully in Texas, and it will probably be successfully challenged in California and Florida too, where you have a lot of retirement communities. And I also think there was action in Arizona. So last time I checked on the issue, it looked like the HOA concept was on its way out, sort of like timeshares.
Okay, dear Anna, in an earlier webinar, you were thinking of asking the Silver team to draft up a district court alike template to consolidate individuals or claims, location, case reference, district court location, date, county, state, date, miscellaneous info, etc., for them to investigate. Whatever came of that?
Well, things have moved on to a point where district courts really shouldn't be operating at all in the states of the union. And so the move is on to make the district courts vacate and leave the states of the union and return to the District of Columbia, where district courts belong. They have been operating improperly and trespassing on our jurisdiction for 165 years, which is really quite enough. So we would like to just get them out of here and then begin the process of reversing their findings and their judgments, because 99.9% of it was all taken under conditions of deceit, fraud, and trespass. So a lot of those district court judgments just seem they need to go away, and the district courts need to go away. So that's what we turned our attention to, is just plain replacing the district courts with common law courts and being done with it.
Okay. Hi, my name is XYZ. I won't put that out there. Almost on Canada. I am not sure if Anna has time for random questions. If she does, I'm dying to know who was with her when she fixed the Africa blockage, or if she can say, I will settle with, does she personally know? Wow, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. SADHGURU, or did you know Jordan Maxwell? Thank you.
like most people, I knew Jordan Maxwell through his writings and through his copious video and podcast work. Fascinating individual. The the work that we've done in Africa has been of two kinds. One at the national level to help people assemble their local assemblies within each African state, right? And also to help get things organized so that they would have a federation type structure and instrumentality that they could then use to represent them in international affairs and to issue their a common currency for all of the African countries to use, and basically develop a business and government structure similar to what we did initially when the the first states banded together and issued their common currency and set up their common defense. So we're basically working with them to implement our model, which was very successful for a period of years before it was usurped and undermined in breach of trust and conditions of fraud and deceit by the British Empire.
Okay, next question. Hi, to open a vendor account on GFG, do you have to be an ASN? If yes, does being status corrected okay through whatever means you recorded your 1779?
Well, I'm not up to speed on that question. At the last I was aware of, all of the vendors on GFG were operating as unincorporated land jurisdiction businesses. And so I'm afraid I'm working with information that's probably a year and a half old. So I can't really answer that. You'd have to forward that to the vendor account services at GFG.
Okay, next question. You probably have the same answer. Can you comment on the GFG vendor accounts that went live last week? Are they only interacting with other vendors? Is there a site to locate these vendors to do business with now or later when all go live? And what method is being used for the vendors to fund their GFG account?
Yeah, again, I'm afraid that that's all information that I'm very dated on. Originally, each vendor was being given a certain amount of funding to invest in their business and to extend the reach of their business. So that is a separate issue from conducting business and trading back and forth. They're bringing the vendor accounts forward. They're bringing them up on the pages are now visible. And they've got over 30,000 businesses that they are bringing forward in this way. And then you'll simply be able to start doing transactions with those businesses using your GFG account funds. So it's a kind of stair-stepped process where they're bringing all these businesses and all these business pages up so that you can flip through a directory. There'll be a directory that has like categories of business enterprises. There'll be goods, there'll be services. You'll be able to go down the list and search for, who knows, car rentals, and find businesses that are providing that particular service. So yeah, there'll be kind of a listing and search engine type function where you'll be able to locate vendors, and having located vendors and seeing their pages, you'll be able to decide whether you want to buy something from them or not. And you'll be able to use your accounts and your AFD and your credits, your prepaid credits, to conduct business and actually buy and sell and do whatever you need to do.
Okie dokie. All right. Can you please ask her to explain what event in history shows Britain has been in control of Iran since 1908? I cannot find the historical record that supports this. Also about the direct descendant of King David. Is this now going to delay the opening of Global?
No, the business about, who they gave the funds to and all that other stuff is just more, it's more attempts to evade responsibility for what they did. Handing it off to an innocent third party is a traditional way for people in this particular situation to get rid of the onus for what they've done and leave it on the back of the innocent third party who's, doesn't deserve to be upbraided or accused of anything because they were an innocent third party. But no, that won't have any effect on Global and its opening or its functioning. The essence of all of these things is that you're going to be in a very tumultuous, very unusual, different kind of situation for a while as you find your feet. I sometimes compare this whole situation with actually literally coming home from a long sea voyage. You're used to the deck pitching under your feet. You've learned to adjust to the tides and the rolling of the waves. And so when you walk down that dock and you're on solid ground again, it takes a little while just to get fully oriented and be able to deal with average ground and average gravity. So we're going to go through that with buying and selling things. We're going to have to get used to exchanging different currencies. Although most of that will be taken care of for us by the computerization of the system, it's still going to be different. And it will be more challenging to keep track of the balance in your accounts. It'll be a little bit more work, but it will open up the entire world to your fingertips. And you'll be able to do things that you couldn't do before. So I guess it's kind of it's a trade-off like anything. But with the entire rest of the world going to a system like this, we could hardly remain behind in a monopolized and sequestered economy. We're being called to come out and play and actively participate in the world economy in ways that we haven't been able to participate for 165 years. So yeah, we are going to have some ups and downs here, but for the most part, it should be a grand adventure, and it should be something that we all engage in that sense of adventure with something new. What can I do with this? What are the advantages of this new system? And there are some very significant advantages. So start thinking of it in terms of exchange rates, commodities, services. What things do you really need? What things do you want? How do you plan on changing your life? When, suddenly you have several $1 million worth of assets that are under your own control. What are you going to do? It's a brave new world out there.
Okay, for years you have stated that the military could very easily convert to an honorable soldiery by status correcting. You have also stated that we are not necessarily going to hear the de facto government come out and acknowledge the bankruptcy, even though it would be a lot easier if they did. Well, the other day while watching a movie, an ad popped up for the Army. I've seen it before, and this time I counted 3 times where they used the phrase, "I am an American soldier." I am intrigued to find out, is the Army telling us something? Are they now serving in honor?
Well, the Marine Corps has always served in honor, which is an odd truth about the Marine Corps. And now the other branches are waking up to that reality and are emphasizing whether they're American armed forces or not. You have to realize that there have always been American armed forces and there have always been U.S. armed forces, both. And at various times, the population of one service versus another has changed considerably. But yeah, there have always been American armed forces as opposed to U.S. armed forces. And so you're seeing more of an awareness of that in the ranks and in the advertising.
Okay, up next. Why am I being told in Pennsylvania that TASA has outdated 928 documents? Why am I being asked in Pennsylvania what is my affiliation with certain nationals?
There's nothing particularly outdated about the 928s that I know of. It's simply that you don't need to fill them out if you're an average Joe. You should look at the 928s, look at each one of the documents, and determine whether or not it deals with an issue that you need to deal with. If you've got a child, you're probably going to want to claim your child. Okay? If you have a business, you're probably going to want to claim your business name. All right? So there are certain things that, you know, it matters if you have a child or if you have a business, for example. But other people that don't have children or don't have children that are minors or people that don't have a business wouldn't need or be interested in those extra forms that the 928s provide. So you just don't spread the idea that they're out of date. It's just that we no longer do them as a, not everybody has to do all the 928s. Let's put it that way. Okay. I'm really sick and tired of having to deal with people that are running around going, oh, you have to do the 928s. No, you don't have to do the 928s. Oh, but maybe you should do the 928s. I'm saying this as clearly as I possibly can. Please listen. All you have to do to get the basic job done is that one of the 1789 declarations, okay, and the two witness statements, 1779 declarations and a couple of witness statements, and there you go. But yes, we do recommend that you look at the 928s and determine if there is some part of those that you specifically, individually, might need, like the baby documents, like the business name claims. Is that it, Shannon? Are we done?
Yeah, about covers that one. In Anna's article, Pawn Shops and Saints, who is the third party who got the loot? Who's the man she talks about?
He's an American who, anyway, long story, he has the rare DNA group that's associated with the Hebrew kings, or so the story goes. I can't prove any of this, right? This is just the narrative. And that he was therefore the heir of Solomon, and that all of this gold that was from Solomon's mines was his inheritance. I personally don't put any stock in any of that. I consider it all a bunch of made up narrative and BS and excuses. Obviously, Solomon hasn't been around for 10,000 years, and we don't need to deal with the past. We need to deal with the present, and we need to walk forward into the future. I just see it as people trying to pawn something off onto someone and providing a big excuse for it. So count Grana in with the skeptics and the people that just really don't give a flying one above the past. I know the past. I know how we got here. That part's important to know. But, making claims based on some supposed DNA heritage going back 10,000 years just makes no sense to me. That's just a replay of the whole doctrine of discovery and other excuses that have been used for giving one person a clump of money and not giving it to somebody else. And, anyway, he pardon me, he seems to be a very decent person and to want to do the right thing, and he's not greedy and grasping and trying to keep people from having their homes or anything. So to an extent, it's a workable solution where nobody has to die. Okay. If we didn't have some sort of narrative like this so that there was an innocent third party standing good for it all, then all of the guilty parties would have to be massacred. Under the law, they've done things that are, it's treason, it's usurpation, it's breach of trust, it's national level identity theft, it's inland piracy. All these things are capital crimes. So we'd be killing like 2 million people. And if you don't want to be stuck killing 2 million people, well, better to try to work out some sort of other arrangement where the crime can be expiated without having to kill millions. We've already seen enough death and dying in this world.
I don't know about millions. I have a few people on a list we could start with.
I know, but it's put before us to choose life. So choose life every time you get a chance. Death
Why do you think I still have a list?
Right. Choose life for yourself. Choose life for everybody else. Just choose life and you won't go wrong. It's those who choose death that always get into trouble.
Okay, next question. The Iranian people seem to have a different opinion than you on what's going on. They seem to be looking at it as a chance to be a free people again, like they once were under the Shah.
No,
All
they were
Iranians
never.
around all Iranians around the world are cheering and praising Donald Trump for finally toppling the Islamic terrorist government that was installed by the deep state back in 1979. Are they that stupid that they think it's a good thing when it really isn't?
I explained the whole business, how they went bankrupt in 1907, and then the insurance companies that were underwriting them came around and foreclosed on all of the different national franchises, and also they foreclosed on like the New Zealand Incorporated. They foreclosed on Australia Incorporated. They foreclosed on Iran Incorporated back in 1908. And this insurance company called the White Fleet showed up on their doorsteps and took over the government apparatus, and they've been in charge of it ever since. So, that's the story on the 1908 takeover. And again, these were not governments, these were government service providers. So there was nothing illegal about what they did, but it's still there, and it's still very much a controlling interest. So, they're looking back to the good old days of the Shah. Well, the same insurance company interests put the Shah in place that are now removing they took the Shah in, they took the Shah out. They put the Ayatollahs in. Now they're taking the Ayatollahs out. What you should really be concentrating on is getting rid of the insurance company that's manipulating all this and the British government's tentacles in your own affairs, so that you can have the government that you need and that you want without going through this every 40, 50 years, where somebody in Whitehall decides, well, the Ayatollahs are not unpopular, so let's get rid of them. Or, the Shah is unpopular, so let's get rid of him. And they're meddling in your business. They're playing the Iranians and everybody else like fools, just like they did here. They came in. They have a governmental services corporation. they get hold of part of the apparatus, the bureaucracy of government, and then they start acting as the government when they're not the government. They're just a government services provider, a vendor of government services. The same damn thing happened in Iran. And they've been having the same kind of upheaval that we have with the Republicans and the Democrats. The only difference is that the CIA is more directly manipulating along with MI6, which are those two things are now the one and the same. They just announced that they are one and the same. So the CIA and MI6 are the same intelligence agency. And they've been the same intelligence agency for all intents and purposes for the last, well, since the world wars. So anyway, all of this it's just outrageous bullshit that we have to end, all of us, the Iranians, everybody. We need to get these corporations out. They're just vendors, they're not the government, and they need to be removed from their positions of meddling and manipulation. So then finally the Iranian people can choose their own government, whatever that government may be.
Okay, next one. Was there ever a GFG education site? I thought I saw one on the TASA website, but then it was taken down.
I have no idea. I know that there were plans to set up a GFG education program. Whether or not that ever happened, I don't know. I've been just a tad bit busy focused on other aspects. I came back too fast.
No, I was muted and didn't realize it. Can you give us any update and current status on the GFG?
As far as I know, all of the systems are now live. All of the accounts are funded. All the vendor accounts are being brought forward, and the pages for the vendors are being published and put up. There's 30,000 of them, so that may take a little while, but they are doing it. And everything is prepared. We're going through various different kind of diplomatic processes to not only free up, but to receive back funds that are owed to the government and funds that are owed to the people and assets that are owed to the people. So that whole process continues on apace, but it will. It took, what, 65 years for everything to get all messed up. And it's going to take a while to get it cleaned up and back to what it should be. So don't expect things to happen overnight. We have 165 years worth of correction to correct. And we have to start somewhere. So we're starting at the present moment and recouping as much as we can and getting ready to serve all of the banking needs that everybody has. The only alternative is the C jurisdiction and all of the 80 million statutes and all of the other garbage that goes along with that monopoly. So we have a viable and effective system ready to go. I'm not really focused on the retail level of GFG. I'm not the one that's going to be keeping watch over your individual accounts. I'm not the one that's going to be issuing your prepaid credit cards. I have enough to do just doing what I do, which is to be aware of all of the legalities and laws and issues and diplomatic faux pas and treaties and other things that have to go into this.
Okay, next question. What is the current status on the closing of the district courts?
Well, this is an idea which I have brought forward in diplomatic circles, and I'm preparing to push forward to an even greater degree, because basically these district courts have no business operating in the states of the Union. Unfortunately, when you start digging at one corner of the spider web, you start pulling it, the whole thing starts to come apart, and you start having to deal with other aspects, other instances of fraud and mismanagement, malfeasance, and misadministration. So some of this stuff gets kind of deep, but I am proceeding on the pursuit of getting rid of the district courts entirely. As far as I can see, there's no reason for them to be here.
Okay, the next question. Why? Whoa, that's a weird one. Let me read this over real quick. What is your current opinions and stance on the upcheck of utility bills? And what does this stem from?
Well, we own the utilities and they charge us. And they never share out any of the profit from the utilities. And they tax us on top of it. So the utilities are just part of the big ball of wax in which our bureaucracy fed itself instead of feeding the owners of these public utilities. And it's, you know, it's another aspect of the people being defrauded and misidentified and misrepresented and denigrated and basically abused and breached trust. I don't know how many of you have ever thought about it, but which public are these public utilities serving? It certainly isn't yours. They are charging you whatever they want to charge you for services that you already paid for, using resources that you already own. And so it's like double dipping. But that's the same way this entire thing has been operated. That's the substance of the fraud. And so I expect that the public utility issues will get resolved, but they will be a relatively minor thing compared to mortgages and property taxes. And they will probably be resolved after both mortgages and property taxes are removed.
Okay. We were wondering if we could get any answers from Anna about the 2026 celebration in Philly for the 250th anniversary celebration. Could you please elaborate on the plans so everyone may celebrate properly?
Well, you know, I'm afraid that President Trump and his instant war has somewhat blacklisted and backlisted our plans for reopening in Philadelphia. There probably will not be time to do the kind of preparation and celebration this year that we had hoped for, mainly because the British territorial subcontractors took it in their woolly minds to start a war in the Mideast, and also wars in Cuba and wars in Venezuela, which are all mercenary conflicts and can't be anything else, and which are illegal, and which they're going to try to charge off to us. And so from my perspective as fiduciary, preventing them from charging off their expenses for these opportunistic quote unquote wars is job one. And other than that, we're going to stumble through the banking changes as best we can and get everybody their options out on the table so that you're not subjected to another 100 years of monopoly inducement and company store policies. We are thoroughly fed up with the USA Inc. We're thoroughly fed up with those who have inherited the USA Inc. and the US Inc. both. They seem to think that they're just going to continue on as they have and that nobody's going to call them on the carpet for it. Well, we are. And we are calling the banks on the carpet for it too, because if the banks were doing their job, then all of this wouldn't have been possible. The banks had to go along with it, the banks had to participate in it, and the banks had to expedite and enforce all of it. And if they hadn't done that, then all of this gargantuan fraud and usurpation against our government simply would not exist. So the banks have got a heaping helping of the blame for all of this, and they're going to have to make good on it and clean it up. So a lot of the focus is on basically doing whatever has to be done to make the banks come into compliance.
Okay. If the IRS is going away, what about people that drive Uber and Lyft or DoorDash, etc.? Since it is technically a government contract job, will they still have to pay taxes? And are you saying that taxation will go away for all?
I am living in the expectation that it will simply go away because it costs more to administer than it brings in. And if there's no other reason why it shouldn't exist, there's the nutshell, you know. The only reason that they ever had a tax like that was to work as a pressure stopcock on the inflation of the Federal Reserve note. Well, take away the Federal Reserve note, there's no longer any reason for a pressure valve to control inflation of the Federal Reserve note, and therefore there's no reason for the IRS. So just get rid of it. Get rid of all of the waste and expense that goes into keeping these records and going out and trying to, you know, say that people owe these tax debts that aren't even debts. You know, it's a debt on a debt. This is an absolutely crazy system. It's bonkers. You know, oh, I'm going to pay a debt on a debt with a debt. Think about that. It's crazier than a bed bug. And we've been living with it and putting up with it all these years. You know, their 16th Amendment isn't our 16th Amendment. Our states of the Union never ratified their 16th Amendment. They've been rattling along on the presumption that if we didn't object, it must be okay by acquiescence. But no, we've been objecting plenty since 1920. And they have just been using their impersonations and their identity theft rackets to try to ignore the fact that these particular taxes never applied to anyone but federal employees. Well, so here we go. Let's just get rid of the IRS and get rid of the multi-billion-dollar tax consultancies and the multi-billion-dollar law firms that are established to do nothing but deal with a tax that shouldn't exist in the first place. Let them find something decent and worthwhile to do.
Okay, we are always told we are U.S. citizens. When will they ever bring up the fact that they are bringing the British territorial part of being U.S. citizen? Nobody in this country thinks they are British in any way whatsoever. How do you think that Trump is going to make an offer to the U.S. citizens and get them to admit they are British territorial citizens? Americans will never go for this unless they are deceived.
Right, that's it. That's it in a nutshell. Americans would never have gone for any of this except for being deceived and except for their employees, their public employees, acting in breach of trust in violation of their service contracts. All of the federal service contracts require what? Good faith service. Has any of this been done in good faith? No. No, it has not. And so all of this is bogus. It's 100% bogus. It shouldn't have ever happened. It was a crime that it did. It's still a crime. And they need to jerk awake and correct their operations and their administration of anything and everything that they do regarding the federal service contracts, which are the constitutions.
Okay, Anna, it looks like Trump merged the Federal Reserve Bank with the U.S. Treasury, and I believe he will be issuing monetary instrument of some sort. So, if Trump issues an official currency of the U.S., how will that affect the value of an AFD? The only way a currency has value is if it's accepted by the local gas station, Home Depot, Costco, etc. If the U.S. Mint issues something called official currency of the United States, who but ASNs will consider AFD as legal currency?
Well, most of the rest of the world isn't even accepting fiat currency anymore. So it would be a domestic currency similar to what it has been that isn't actually a form of money, but is instead a voucher type system, a script. And it would be operating under monopoly conditions simply because nobody offered a different product. And we're offering a different product. So without a monopoly to support itself, it's very unlikely that they would be able to continue with this ridiculous debt note system of theirs. There are too many things wrong with it. There are too many things about it that are illegal, that have never been legalized in any form of remedy. And generally speaking, it could be attacked on so many different ways, on so many different fronts. But most importantly, the fact that it would be a de facto monopoly. And monopoly in obstruction of trade is against federal code. So even they and their own laws reject the premise of having a monopoly closed system based on a voucher system trading debts. And that's all I've seen come out of Trump. Stable coins are essentially debt. They've destroyed Bitcoin to a large extent. They've destroyed other digital currencies. It's just part of the course with them. They want monopoly. They want to control our domestic economy down to a gnat's eyelash. They want to tell us what we can buy and what we can't buy and how much we can buy. They want to set the value of our money. They want to keep us from any direct trading with the rest of the world. They basically want to keep us as their little house slave to do whatever they need or want done. And basically, it's not going to work.
Okay, for the next question. What would Anna suggest to someone who was married in Southeast Asia and had started immigration process 3 years ago to reunite with his wife, only to find the de facto Department of State pivots to suspend immigrant visas that country is listed, leaving her strayed abroad with each day feeling a dash of hope and a broken heart? I have hired an immigrant lawyer to expedite the process. Please share your optimistic opinion on the situation and anything that might be helpful reuniting with her.
Let me get this straight. An American got married overseas?
That's the way it reads, yes.
And there's no information about which country?
Just Southeast Asia. That's all it says.
There are different immigration rules that apply to every country. So, it's different for Thailand than it is for Cambodia. It's different for Cambodia than it is for Vietnam. It's different for South Korea, I really can't give you an answer. Generally speaking, if an American marries someone overseas, the marriage is honored as valid, and the American consulate would be the one to provide you with support in bringing your wife to America and working with the immigration officials to make sure that that happens. So I would go to the American consulate nearest you and start banging my dish on the floor. I have a member of my family that is being prevented from rejoining me here in the States, and I want her brought over here ASAP. And let them wrangle it out. Because you're not going to get anywhere with Trump's immigration situation. He's trying to keep as many new immigrants out of the country as possible. And so even those things that are well established and set in cement are being basically parasitized by the immigration officials and the national homeland security people and all of that. They're just being very draconian about whether a person can even come visit here. So I would go through the embassy, I'd go through the State Department.
There we go. Sorry about that. What happened to the foreign banks of the Federal Reserve?
Well, they still exist as foreign banks. Any kind of criminal charges that are being considered against the Federal Reserve and its members will take a while for them to develop and to press. So I wouldn't expect any immediate reaction in the press or any kind of practical thing that you can point to, other than the fact that it's been rolled over into the U.S. Treasury. I do expect there to be criminal charges, but they will probably be criminal charges before the International Court of Justice, and it will probably be some years before we see any kind of actual assistance in terms of getting rid of the Federal Reserve cabal and its influence.
Okay, in the event a duly elected coroner is set to fire a sitting governor with a directive from the assembly, can you provide any further clarification of the authority of the coroner to do so? If it concerns the higher title of nobility and the ability to determine life versus death, does the coroner, with the directive of the assembly, have the ability to fire other de facto officers? Is there a process?
Well, it is kind of a trespass and transgression situation where it's their governor, it's not our governor. You see, a coroner can remove the elected state governor of, say, Wisconsin, but doesn't really have an ability to enter onto another ship and do the work of a coroner that isn't removing a state governor. You see, they have their coroner, we have our coroner, and each one has the right to remove officers within our own house, our own jurisdiction. So when you're talking about removing a governor, you have to first and foremost have elected a governor. We haven't elected any governors. And it wouldn't be effective or proper for us to elect any governors at this point, because a governor is a foreign office and it would have to come through a reconstructed federal republic. Otherwise, we're just dealing with ourselves, and we would have other administrative officers that were responsible for doing the work of a state governor. I guess the best way to think of this is that a part of our government is gone. The part that remains, we have control of. How we're going to deal with the missing part is still up in the air. And their state governors don't have anything to do with our offices. They're foreign entities. They're British territorial government service providers, foreign vendors, and dealing with what we need to do to get rid of them is a combination of restoring our own government and entering into the diplomatic process to renegotiate old treaties and come to new agreements with the principals. So if you've been thinking that you're a coroner of an assembly and you can just go in and get rid of the state governor, no, it does not work that way. They have a coroner who is competent and required to take that state governor out if they start acting in an irrational way or grossly neglecting their duties or operating in some manner that is obviously not for the welfare of the organization. But no, they have their own coroner. And I hope you're aware that the only governor that we can remove is our governor, and we don't have one at the moment.
Okay, next question. Question is, when the Prosperity account becomes active, would a link inside of our Prosperity account be made available for us to order our debit cards, and would there be a daily limit? Many of us are living paycheck to paycheck and would like to purchase a home to give us security after converting the AFDs. How would the funds be wired directly to the escrow company / attorney to purchase a home?
Purchasing a home or selling one is going to be a kind of separate operation in the new system, because there are a lot of issues involved in, was the property that you're buying actually a trust property, or was it a property only presumed to be a trust property? You see. And so you're going to have a plenitude of different situations where, yeah, it was owned by Americans and it should never have been in the state land trust, you know. Or, yeah, it's owned by a federal employee who has adopted federal citizenship, and so it should be in the land trust. How are you going to buy this house out of that condition? All these things have to be worked out. And so I wouldn't get too excited about buying a house right now unless you're going to just do it and hope that the system will get settled and be favorable to whatever you have worked out for yourselves. Because from my perspective, a lot of these titles are worthless. A lot of the land titles that have been perpetuated and promoted and attached to American property are worthless because they were fraudulent to begin with. And so all these issues of the different kinds of land trusts that were set up, well, all that was bogus too. So, you know, it's going to come down to who actually owns the property, who has the right to sell it, who has the right to buy it. So all of those things are going to be up in the air like so many shoes tossed up. And, you know, there are all sorts of different theories about how this is going to work. There are all sorts of different considerations that need to be made. But anyway, that will be attached to the Prosperity Centers, and you'll have to go through a process to get like basically a separate check that will be issued for those kinds of purchases.
Okay. Do you know if there will be a way, once GFG launches, of converting AFDs to FRNs for daily purchases until it is universally accepted?
Well, the AFDs are not a direct, they're not in the same realm as Federal Reserve notes. AFDs are asset-backed money. Federal Reserve notes are basically credit instruments or debit instruments. So they're not in the same realm at all. And what you have is prepaid credit that can cancel out any amount of Federal Reserve notes. So, but the whole idea that you're going to have Federal Reserve notes to buy things anymore, and that this is going to be your limitation, no. Federal Reserve notes haven't been produced in this country since 2009. You know, there's no way that we could even if we didn't have credit cards and debit cards and things of that nature, there's no way that we could ever, at this point, supply the quantity of cash that would be necessary to continue on. So you'll be getting other kinds of credit and debt instruments that you can trade for whatever you want or need. But you're going to have to sit down and think and learn, okay? There's just no avoiding it. Debt notes are canceled by credit. In this case, prepaid credit. So you're not going to be seeing Federal Reserve notes. They're going to go away, as they should have done in 2008. So stop worrying about Federal Reserve notes. They're being canceled out by prepaid credit.
Okay, every time I share an article from Anna with anyone, it tells them that the site is unsecured. They do not want to open it to learn anything out of fear of corruption. Any recommendations?
That's a Paul Stramer question. It's if you pay a certain amount of money and go through a bunch of hoops, then they'll go, oh, site recognized. But as I observed in the article about the Federal Food and Drug Administration, whether they say it's secure or not is sort of a ridiculous and moot point, because they don't do anything about public safety. They don't actually look at these things in terms of whether they're safe or not. They only look at them in terms of, are they paid up or not? And if I know Paul, and I know a lot of people like Paul, they simply won't pay the premiums and feed the beast. So that's all it's about. It's about money. It's not about safety. And I would just, if their freedom isn't worth the risk of going to an unregistered site, what can I say?
Okay, next question. If you were going to marry someone from the Philippines, would you recommend getting married in the Philippines or get her to the USA on a fiance visa and get married in the USA? Would it make it easier to change her status to an American state national if we were married in America?
Not that I know of. I believe that there are very well developed relationships and laws and rules that allow either option. But of the two, I would think it would be harder to get a fiance visa and go through all of that than if you were in the Philippines, simply to get married in the Philippines.
Okay. Question. I have downloaded the docs from GFG website to correct my status, and it said that I must submit those completed documents to the site with the code that I was given after establishing an account. How does that work? Since I cannot establish an account until I've submitted the documents, but I cannot have the code until I've established an account.
Sounds to me like you're on the wrong pathway. For those of us who established our status, we don't have to go through the GFG process. We just have to upload copies of our pre-existing documents. So that's what they're talking about. You need to go back out and look at the alternative route, which is you've never done any paperwork before and you're just going to do this for the first time. Shannon?
It's a Christmas miracle. We're finally caught up on questions.
Well, we certainly needed to take some time out and do this. I'm sorry that I'm not the expert on GFG's retail functions that you're all so avidly interested in. That is not the side of GFG that I work on. And I'm sure that they are working on lots of things that I'm unaware of in terms of customer service and, the rollout of the vendor facilities and all of that. Maybe we can get Hunter or someone from GFG to come on and answer questions, but that's not my bailiwick.
I'll
So-
see what I can do about next Monday for us.
Yeah, someone who is more up to date on those sorts of consumer issue questions, because I'm certainly not.
Well, I'm clueless, but anyone who knows me knows that.
Well, it's been a very trying week. It's been very heart-wrenching to see what's going on in the Middle East. It's very frustrating that our country has been suckered into this obvious game. And I'm just hoping that each and every one of you are centering your lives and your attention on things that you can control and contemplating what you want and need and focusing on what's positive in your lives and not letting this war in the Mideast, war in Cuba, war in Venezuela, war, which is nothing but a bunch of evil profiteers trying to make money on the lives and skills of others. I hope that you're not letting it unduly capture your attention and focus on things that are not positive, things that are not aligned with life or love or anything worthwhile. So just keep on the up and up, folks. Think positive, be positive, choose life, and realize that the USA Inc. is not this country. Just like the US Inc. is not this country. We, the living, breathing Americans, and our homes, our businesses, our states of the union, that's America. So we are, if anything, having to do more with less than ever. We have a lot of expenses. We have a lot of things that we need to work on, some of them with GFG, some of them that are our unique responsibility. And so consider that the members of the Federation are working against greater odds than we ever have. And we need all the support we can get in terms of your consideration, your thoughts, your prayers, your assistance in whatever way you can help. This is a tremendously huge initiative that we're undertaking, and there are few and far between when it comes to actually having the right skills in the right place at the right time. So we can't afford to lose any of our people. We can't afford to stop doing what we're doing. We have to keep nose to the grindstone for the next few weeks. So I will keep you all posted. I will try to help you with understanding some of the geopolitics and technological and other issues that we're facing. And I'll invite you to help out with the growth and the education of our Continental Marshal volunteers. We're getting a large number of people that are willing to volunteer and to undergo the training, which is substantial. We're also getting a whole new cadre of coordinators trained and verified for positions to help the state assemblies get organized faster. So hopefully you'll be seeing lots of fruition in terms of better protection for Americans and more assistance to help your organizations at the state level, the assemblies, get organized and be of more help to you individually and as a state. So,
Everyone
onward
that'll
and
notice
upward.
I put my phone number up there for donations. We had a hoopla with Revolut. I have a new avenue now. So if you wanted to text me how to get your donations to Anna via Chime or wire transfer, please text me and I will send you back the information necessary.
Right, and we still have TASA and Paul Stramer's donate buttons. Just remember to, leave a little note saying this is for the Federation, and they'll make sure that we get it. So, lots of movement, lots of good things happening, and obviously a lot of concern about finances is being addressed here to the extent possible, and hopefully we'll get someone from GFG to do a presentation or do a question answer session that will have up-to-date information for you. Okay, guys? God bless. Take care. Keep on the sunny side and take some time out to enjoy your favorite mental spaces.